I'm Mark Cann, and today I'm here with Reggie James. Reggie is founder and CEO of Digital Clarity, a digital strategy consultancy, and he's been helping businesses for over 20 years. Before starting Digital Clarity, Reggie was a senior commercial leader at Yahoo Europe, where he helped drive the company's massive growth in the early days of the internet. Today, he is a regular podcast guest, sharing his take on marketing trends, business strategy, and entrepreneurship. Known for his creative thinking and data-driven approach, Reggie also gives back by mentoring startups and emerging marketeers. He's exited 2 tech startups, so he understands the challenges of growth. And today, Reggie helps B2B tech leaders in the C-suite to achieve sustainable and rapid growth by providing a clear strategy, an AI stack with frameworks developed over 2 decades and working with over 600 companies. And when he's not doing this, he's a long-suffering Leicester City fan.
Hi, I'm Reggie James, and I'm here today at Growth Warriors, delighted to be a guest of Mark Cann. Mark is the founder of Growth Warriors, who are a go-to-market and lead generation consultancy helping scale up B2B businesses grow. He's got such an extensive background that I've written it down so I don't miss anything. So Mark's been in the game for well over 15 years, and he's been working with clients across the UK, the US, and right across Europe. He's all about driving predictable growth, the data-driven tactics, and using AI tools. He's got experience in B2B SaaS, EdTech, MarTech, and Health Tech, and he was part of the Vungle team that sold for $750 million. Mark is also big on giving back. He's been a member of the Mayor of London's startup program and has helped well over 100 mentees on Growth Mentor. He's based in Portsmouth, and he's known for his no-nonsense strategic approach. And he also is a big fan of basketball. Thanks, Mark. So Mark, as I said, I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and let's get straight into it.
Yep.
So we're here talking about some of the latest trends on B2B marketing. We're looking at some of the things that are happening out there. 2025 is a big challenge because a lot of people are using old-fashioned techniques. Why are most B2B marketing advice, why are they outdated now?
Well, I think probably the first part is that a lot of B2B marketing advice, whether it's published articles, blogs like LinkedIn posts, they're all based in silos. So what you'll find is that it will be a tech vendor or company that has an agenda to push one channel over another. So I think that's the first part. I think the second part, and we're going to talk about this a bit later, is that traditionally marketers have thought in funnels. And I actually don't think it's a linear process for buyers. Buyers like to explore, they like to experiment, and they want to treat buying as an experience and almost like their playground in some ways.
Yeah.
And I think if you go back to what we were talking about with the silos, is that traditionally, like, inbound isn't really basically like predictable enough for companies like scale-ups. So where they're relying on people to find them through channels that traditionally take quite a long time to build. So whether that's SEO, content marketing, all of those areas, we're looking at quite a long lead time. And really scale-ups are looking for like fast, predictable growth. I think like the other factor is that there's strategies like ABM, which really are kind of, adopted by pitching enterprise, which traditionally ABM is quite sort of a resource time intensive, and it requires lots of different departments and team members to work together, which makes it quite inefficient. And I think what we're seeing now with the advent of AI and technologies like Clay.com is actually more of a compromise, I think. And we're looking at more personalized, scalable, intelligent outbound.
So what you're saying is that basically, if you're still using old-fashioned sort of marketing techniques, you need to sort of wake up and look at what's around now. One of the things that I've found, just touching on some of the points that you said there, which I 100% wholeheartedly agree with, is that one of the things is that the buyers are very much in control now. They have access to so much resource, so many different areas that they can actually touch on and get information on, that if you're bombarding them with sales messages, you're not always going to get, it's not going to resonate with them all the time, especially when not all of them are in market. So yes, I totally agree with you. So what can people do in terms of, with all these things that are happening and changing, What's the best way of actually addressing those old-fashioned techniques?
First of all, they can evaluate like what other companies are doing that are at a similar stage from them. Like, I don't think scale up should copy enterprises, and I don't think that basically startups need to be like agile and be able to test. But at the same time, when they become scale ups, they need to grow up. So it's kind of like there's all those parts. So you kind of almost have the organization of moving into a scale up, but actually you still want the agile testing of a startup. So what can they do initially? So I think the first thing that they can do is realize that actually they're driving buyers to different parts of content. So they need to have enough seeded content out there. And one of the stats I read recently is that a buyer needs to consume between like 7 and 10 hours of your content in order to actually kind of know you enough that they feel like they're ready to buy. And that could be across like multiple touch points. So I think you need to have your content seeded on channels that are relevant to your buyer. So if it's B2B, it's going to be LinkedIn, YouTube, in some industries, Twitter or X, but not all of them. And then also ensuring that actually you use email from more than just kind of a lead gen or a discovery call booking channel, and you actually use it as part of a way of actually getting your content out there as well.
And so when you say seeded, what do you mean by seeded, just for those who don't know what seeded means?
Yeah, so it's just make sure that you have a channel that is owned by you that you can then actually like publish that content on. So I think what we're seeing at the moment is a lot of people are relying on one channel. And I actually think you need to diversify, that you have a few channels that buyers can find you on. And then I think what that does is it develops a lot of trust seeing you across channels. And that's not to say that those buyers are going to spend all their time on one channel, which is why they need choice.
I think the point you make there about companies who are maybe 2 years old and may have just nudging $1 million annual recurring revenue, copying go-to-market strategies of someone like HubSpot, which is a $500 million business, and they're wondering why it's not working. I come across that all the time. That really resonates with me. Another thing that I'd add is that sometimes you just need to take a step back and look at what you're doing. What works for one company won't necessarily work for you and what you sell as a business.
Yeah.
And I think that you need something very, very bespoke to you. So always start with a strategy, always take a step back, and we'll really go back to basics.
That kind of brings me on to another point, actually, is I think we've spoken about this in the past, is that what I'm seeing a trend of is you'll get a playbook that a marketing director or CMO that has worked at one company will then try and bring that playbook to the next company. And that also seems to happen with agency selection as well. So you'll find that an agency will be really comfortable with PPC or SEO.
Yes.
And so they'll recommend that as the channel. But what that I think doesn't do for the startup that's trying to push 1 million plus in revenue is it doesn't encourage like basically a culture of testing. It kind of says, this is something that I have experience and knowledge in, so this is the channel we should use. Have you experienced anything similar to that?
Yeah. Oh, Mark, very much so. I mean, you've really hit the nail on the head. Nothing against agencies. We were an agency. We were one of the first Google PPC agencies in the UK. We built a technology off the back of it. The reality is, in today's world, a lot of agencies, they use a very light touch. So they believe that their specialism, be it PPC, be it SEO, will solve the challenge for that particular client. We both know, having been around the block a few times, that anything linear will never work because our clients don't travel that way. They use different touch points. They can use different, I was reading somewhere that a client can look at well over 200-300 commercial pieces of social content in a day. So they're being bombarded by different things. What they will engage with is something that resonates with them, but it doesn't necessarily mean they'll buy. It's a journey, and it can take such a long time. I think you've talked about this before in previous podcasts, that it can take they build up a picture. It's like it's building up trust.
Yes.
And I think that's something to remember, that nothing good happens immediately. It's always the exception and not the rule. The rule is sustainable, scalable growth done the right way, measuring as you go, as you say, testing, seeing what works, trialing, doing all those different things. But yes, just trying one thing with one agency is not necessarily the way forward. And that is why companies need to be wary of old-fashioned techniques that they may have been using a couple of years ago that are really not relevant now. So all those points are really valid. And especially when the company is growing and they get investment or get a private equity company investing in them. So it's very, very key.
Yeah, that brings me nicely on to like when post investment from private equity, I think we were discussing the other day, you quite often find that is where the role of like a fractional CMO is appointed. I just wanted to get your opinion, Reg. Do you think that's a good idea, or are there, you know, like how does that affect and then the transition and the growth of that newly invested company?
Great question. I would say that it depends on the CMO and it depends on the company. And it depends on the private equity business. If you have an experienced CMO who's worked with private equity, because the two are completely different. Working with a privately owned company or even a public company, you have a different dynamic. So if a CMO is coming into a private equity company, the runway is very short to show results.
Yeah.
Generally, which is why I'm saying it depends on the remit. I think for CMOs coming into a private equity business, it's very, very important that they're clear going in with their eyes open what they're walking into. But 100%, it's a good idea. CMOs are the linchpin that their communication message is going to drive growth and going to drive sales. So if we reverse engineer that, growth comes from sales. Sales normally come from a communication message. Communication messages are normally driven by marketing, really good marketing. And that's why they need to be really pivotal to the growth of that business.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things I was looking at is if you have investment from a private equity house, then quite often they have a concept called add-ons where they've got like the main software company, as an example, they bought, and then they'll buy these smaller add-on companies.
Yes.
And what you'll find is they'll still, those companies will still be operating in the separate silos, even if they've been sort of basically like joined together as one brand. And I think the success of actually scaling the company via cross-selling and upselling is often affected by this quick period that you talk about where they need to actually prove results quite quickly. But in actual fact, they're going through a rebrand. Then they're going through cultural changes of working with different teams in a different company that actually they still feel like is a individual company that's very different from theirs. There's all those.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all, you've got to view it almost as an M&A, a merger and acquisition.
Yeah.
Because you may have 2 or 3 companies or more within a portfolio.
Yeah.
And they have a common goal, which is growth, but one may feed into the other. So it's really, really important to have one central communication point where the leaders of those different businesses are aware of what's going on, but also the leader of the private equity business is actually very, very clear in their communication in terms of what's actually going on. And that sometimes does sit or land on the lap of the CMO.
Yes.
So the CMO is the person, the senior leader that's liaising with the CEO and the CRO, the chief revenue officer, and those 3 are really the kind of trifecta, if you like, of what's going to be driving the company forward. They are the leaders that have to drive everything through that filters down into the rest of the organization. And that's all about culture, communication, and having regular buy-in as things change, because nothing stays the same. So, so that's why the CMO is important.
Yep.
And a fractional CMO has to have the skill sets of understanding all these different things, juggling all these different communication skills, as well as communicating the message of that business to the target market, making it work at scale.
Yes.
So that's the big challenge. But yes.
Going back to that, proving results quickly, obviously the culture changes when private equity have made an investment into the business and they have to get these results very quickly. But ultimately, like what got the business there in the first place, whether it's the individual businesses, was often through a culture of experimentation, creativity, and testing. And that's maybe not happening, and there's maybe falling back on more sort of risk averse approaches. As an example, like what do you think can be adapted or changed, if anything, to make this transition happen better for both parties? I guess.
No, absolutely. When we go and see organizations that are owned by private equity businesses, one of the big things once we do our run through our frameworks is we find that some of the leaders need to get out of their own way.
Yeah.
Because it's a cultural thing, and so many people bring so many different things to the table. Even a CMO's approach and their internal communication skills are going to be absolutely crucial in terms of getting buy-in from what I was just saying about from the CRO or even the chief technical officer.
Yeah.
In terms of how they drive things forward. But yeah, companies have to change. Culture changes. What got you to 3 million and the funding is not going to get you to 30 million. They're completely different dynamics. Managing 10 people is completely different to managing 200 people.
Yeah.
So nobody knows how to do that unless they have mentorship, unless they have, had that experience or are given the tools to learn that along the way. And if the private equity business knows that that's the case, then they have to give that company time or that leader time, or actually parachute someone else in who can actually help that CEO take that business to the next level. So that's really key.
What sort of trends are you seeing, Reg, in terms of what UK private equity houses, what sort of industries or types of businesses are they buying?
If you look at what was very popular, B2B tech, SaaS businesses are still very, very key. Of course, now, dare I use it, the AI backed companies are obviously everywhere. But in terms of industry, we're looking at everything. Health and well-being, incorporating AI stacks are very, very big at the moment. So everything to do with health, everything to do with sustainability, irrespective of what a lot of people may say, anything that's going to be keeping the planet going, any technology that's actually going to be helping develop sustainable growth for organizations. The other area is energy. Energy companies, so things like carbon, capturing carbon, neutralizing carbon, all of those kind of things. It's a big issue right now. And no matter what anyone says, it's going to become a bigger issue as we move forward. So there's still things. Healthcare, as I touched on before, is important, but it's such a wide church. Broad church, in the sense that it's got different areas to do with the person. Then you've got things like medical, healthcare, hospitals. Running those more efficiently. If you've been using the NHS recently, you'll know that your name and details may be on one computer, but then when you go to a specialist, it may not be on their computer. And it can very much turn into a computer says no scenario, because the two aren't talking to each other. And there is talk by the government about sort of anonymizing data and letting AI control some of that data and fix a lot of the back end admin stuff, which is really that back end function is can be handled by AI and AI agents. So they're the kind of trends that we're seeing predominantly, yes.
And so for companies that are perhaps past the startup phase, they've got product market fit, they're generating multiple millions of revenue. What are some of the factors that they should be sort of setting themselves up for if they're looking for acquisition or investment from like a private equity house?
You have to start with the end goal and work back. That invariably in any founder's journey, in any business's journey, can change. With a path is never a straight line, as we know. So it's always worth getting or talking to, if you're looking for, and remember, private equity isn't the only way forward.
No.
But if you are looking for private equity or you're looking for some level of investment, then you need to be engaging with those individuals, pinpointing who those people are, talking to those people right from the beginning and saying, listen, I'm doing this. I'd love to talk to you in 12 months' time. Have a look at my business. I'd love to keep you updated on some of those things. Sending a investor deck once you're getting to a certain point. These people look at decks all the time. So it's just about communication and making sure that you're not just revenues. If you're a founder-led business, you've got to take yourself out of the business. So this, because the private equity business or any investor is not just buying you, they're buying the business. So how does the business run without you is really important. So you have, in your case, Mark, lots of little Marks running around who are emulating what you're doing really, really well is very key. So there's lots of different components.
That brings me on to a really interesting point. If I think of, scale up businesses, which is typically what private equity invest in and acquire, one of the key changes within the B2B marketing landscape now is having like a personal brand, which, not encompasses not just expertise around the area or the industry that you're in, but also, shows some beliefs, some ideas and some personality around it. How do you think that's going to kind of evolve as, we get a few years down the line and more people have got personal brands, whether it's the CEO or the founder or the key management members within these kind of scale up companies?
I think it's like with anything, the cream rises to the top. Everyone's got a different personality. At the end of the day, as long as one is authentic, they're not feeling that they have to do it. You can see straight away, you and I are both big fans of Alex Hormozy. I can see that he's a very real individual. He gives back so much. Yeah. He's got the scars, he's got all the war wounds, and he now shares all of that stuff. And I think if you tell your story, and again, it's hard to do it on your own. No one goes to school to learn how to be a industry leader and how to give a TED talk or how to do any of these things. Yeah. These are skills that are acquired over the years. These are things that you learn in the trenches when you're going through tough times. Yeah. But when you speak about that, you could actually speak to buyers, not just buyers, but different people along your journey that it really resonates with them. So the answer to your question really is that a lot of people are doing it, but a lot of people aren't doing it well. And still, when you think about people doing personal branding, I read the other day, only about 2 or 3% of leaders in companies up to 20 million turnover are actually coming out from behind the desk and building a personal brand. So it's very embryonic.
I think a lot of that is going to have to change, because if you think about the number of interactions that buyers have with the actual vendor, they don't have many interactions before. They basically have a lot of interactions in terms of looking for video content and other content, speaking with peers, colleagues. Obviously, there's like dark social where they're looking on Slack and WhatsApp private groups that people can't really, that marketers can't track, as an example. And so I think that potentially will change, because there's a few factors that the CEO needs to be aware of, just outside of selling products and solutions, but like attracting talent as well. And I think they won't be able to do that unless they have a consistent and transparent kind of voice and presence that you can find them on social, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I think the big challenge is getting leaders out from behind their desk and going out, because decisions aren't just made by watching a video per se, though it's very, very important. Yeah. It's all part of the mix, but you can have somebody in a crowd at an exhibition or a show where they're giving a talk and they are scribbling down notes and they're making a mental note. I am really keen in talking to that business when I am ready, because of what that individual, what that CEO, what she may have said, standing on stage, talking about her business with passion. Yeah. And the problems that they solve. That is one of the things. And again, you can't measure that. Suddenly you get a phone call from that individual making those notes, and they're trying to attribute that to a video that they may have seen on LinkedIn or something else. But that is part of the dark social funnel, if you like, that is so key. You're not going to know wherever. You can listen to a podcast like this, and you're making notes. There's so many different things that happen that you can't attribute to. And I think that's the big trend that's happening now. You will be able to measure it, but right now with AI and lots of content that's being produced, might be a blog post, might be whatever, you might be a guest on a radio show or whatever it might be. Yeah. So it's key that people are communicating on different channels, which again, I know you've talked about a lot.
Well, yeah, I think that brings me on nicely to my next point. I think it'd be good to have a chat about some trends that we're seeing within B2B marketing. I think one of the things that I'd like to talk about, seeing as the topic of the day is always like AI and technology, is some offline events. So I think what I'm seeing and hearing from my network is that actually like in-person small breakfast events or exclusive dinners are kind of the way to actually build a community, of advocates between your existing customers, but also inviting prospects and actually developing, that prospect without having to send quite a sort of upfront salesy email, like nurture over time. Like, what are you seeing around that, and how can people, use that if they're maybe not as big a brand as some of the big tech vendors that we talk about,
No, this is a great point. I think this is where things have gone full circle. I'm old enough to remember when I used to work in the magazine industry in IT publishing, that the editors would get a group of senior leaders together in very small dinners and groups. I mean, I'm going well back over 2 decades. And in that environment, in a safe environment, and where no one's selling to anyone, where you have, say, for example, 4 or 5 CMOs, sort of similar industries, just talking about their challenges, talking about some of the things that challenges that they face, some of the things that worked really well for them, sharing, swapping ideas. Those kind of environments kind of really foster a warm, honest debate.
Yeah.
And I think if you can set those things up and encourage those and back those up, I think we both attended an HR forum. Do you remember?
Yes.
In Surrey, the wonderful Surrey HR forum. And that, it's just, again, no one's selling. Everyone's just talking about the challenges that HR directors and people who look after talent management in organizations face. So I'm with you 100%. Small groups and maybe with some themes, and start talking about it. Because the days of just purely doing things online is, it just doesn't work just in a singular linear fashion.
Yeah.
People are searching for that human contact.
It's good to talk about the challenges around getting people to these events. I know ones that I've hosted with sort of bigger B2B tech brands, and it's like we've still struggled to get people there, but there were certain things that we did that made the event more memorable. So I think it was generally like when we sent an invite to people on LinkedIn, we would actually, have a 1 or a 2 page PDF with a proper dossier of photos of the venue and everything else. And I think that made it more kind of official, as it were. I think the fact that we had limited spots, I think was good as well. We would normally host the date around a key conference, so we knew that people are more likely to be in town. But I think the other thing is just the general kind of sort of feeling or vibe of the event. I remember one of the quotes from the attendees was, it felt like I was on a night out with my colleagues. And I was, that's so nice that if you're able to sort of have that kind of quite sort of laid back environment, rather than feeling like you're going to sit and have some dinner and then have the head of sales trying to kind of close you on their latest product,
No, absolutely. I think as long as it's safe, no selling.
Yeah.
It's preparation, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you prep and you do as much as you can, and putting yourself in those people's shoes, what is it, if you were there, what is the kind of thing that you'd like to get out of it?
Totally.
I think that's the key to all of these things.
Yeah. And I think also it's if you can do it with, as a partnership, so that way it's not all reliant on you and your company bringing, all of the attendees. You actually have kind of their network as well. That kind of, I think as long as it's the right partner that you've chosen, that kind of brings some flexibility to the event as well.
Absolutely. Have there been any memorable ones that you've been to recently? Has there been any events that you've thought, this is really good, I've really enjoyed this? I've enjoyed sort of talking to the people, enjoyed maybe the speaker or the topics.
Yes. That brings me on to something else, actually. I think it's really important for at the event, you don't get somebody who works at the company you work at to actually be the speaker of the event.
Yeah.
And you try and invite somebody who is going to be able to create quite an interesting kind of, introduction talk before dinner. Not too long, but just something that, like a short little speech. And somebody who has, an opinion on an area of the industry. And I think that's a really good way to get people to go there, because I've heard of that speaker. I'd really like to go. It's a nice location. All of that kind of thing has worked really, really well. So it would never be the CMO or the chief revenue officer actually doing the acting as the host. I think that's quite important.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and then I'm trying to think of other trends that I'm seeing. I think one of the ones is around community, but I think there's almost 2 sides of the coin, because you could have a Slack group or a WhatsApp group, and I'm sure you're the same as me. You probably got ones that you're on mute to like for maybe like 10 or 20 of them that are
Been onto your needy old groups, and you can't. The thing is, the human brain can't cope with this. You're actually doing your, for a little word, work.
Yeah.
You're actually doing your sort of day job. If you've got things constantly pinging, all the time, and you've got your socials pinging and your LinkedIn pinging, and WhatsApp and Slack and everything else like that, it's just impossible to actually go. You'll just spend all day on them.
Yeah.
So I think managing that is really important. But they are very powerful groups. You're absolutely right. I mean, this is another, it's like an online community.
Yeah.
Is absolutely key. So yeah, I know you get a lot out of those.
I get a lot out of them, but what I find really interesting is the cycle of platforms that they go through. So I'll give you an example. I'll be invited to a group. Some of them are paid, by the way, and some of them are not paid and are free. And I actually do think that makes kind of a bit of a difference to the amount you engage as to whether you're like paid, part of a paid community or not. But the other thing I've noticed is they might start on Slack or they start on Discord, and they 90% of the time move back to WhatsApp for engagement, because people see it on their phone and they go, oh, actually, when I've got time, I will respond to that because it's a group that I like. I know a few of the people. I've got their numbers saved in my phone, so you can kind of see if you go on the attendee list of part of the group, the members, how many of them do you have saved on your phone? So it's kind of part of your network. It feels safe, and you know, generally there's some really interesting debates on some of the WhatsApp groups.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I think the thing to remember, it's giving people choice, because I think it's also generational.
Yeah.
So people of a certain age will not engage on those platforms.
Yeah.
A lot of senior buying decision makers, you won't find them on any of those. You might find them on WhatsApp, but that's about it.
Yeah.
You're not always going to get them on Slack, and especially senior people. So when we were talking about some of the things we've been talking about, companies that are, again, in this sub 5 million turnover bracket, are going to have slightly different leaders to 20 million turnover businesses. The techniques are different. Their internal working mechanisms are different, and the leadership will be different as well.
Yeah.
They may have non-executive directors. They may have more senior in years, millennials, Gen Z, all those different people. But the interesting thing is, I think millennials now make up over 40% of B2B buyers now.
Wow.
So they have grown up with the internet, with mobiles, with social media.
Yeah.
So you need to be part of it. Otherwise, you're missing out half the audience.
Let's wrap it up now, Reg. If you want to go first, but what were your key takeaways from today?
Well, so many different topics, so many different things. I think the one key thing that really stood out for me was that do not follow the herd.
Yeah.
You know, every company is different. And if you're using really old-fashioned techniques, get advice, look at your business, and really look at what's going to work for you.
Yep.
And yeah, I thought that really, really stood out. What about yourself, Mark?
Well, I think the key thing for me is you need to invest time in community, either joining other people's, but also, you know, like measuring what you get out of it. And then within that community, obviously there's some great online communities. I think you actually need to either try and organize an event with your partners, with one select partner, or, you know, try and at least get invited to one, I think would be a key one for me.
Yeah. It's always a good start. Yes.
And I think the final takeaway for me is companies of all sizes should continue to test channels and see, you know, how they could get incremental growth rather than just relying on one big scalable channel and never actually doing any further experimentation and testing.
Fantastic. Wonderful. I really enjoyed that, Mark.
Yeah, thank you for coming in today, Reg. Like I say, I think that we covered quite a bit there, and I look forward to you know, chatting with you again.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. Great being a guest here at Growth Warriors. We'll put some of the links in the show notes, and yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Reg.